I'm Saleh Waziruddin, and I'm speaking against reconsidering the application for tax incentives. There is a lot of misinformation by advocates of business who, even you can see here today, are in a full court press to make you break down and repent because your initial decision wasn't according to their wishes. The tax incentive is not a prize for filling out the paperwork correctly or meeting the minimum criteria. The application is just a qualifier. If your role is to approve everyone who applies, then there's no difference between you and a rubber stamp, which is what business interests want everybody to assume is your role. But we, the residents of St. Catharines, elected you to represent the interests of everyone in making every decision count and pushing your policies forward in our interest in every case. We are being distracted with circumstantial similarity in a street address between this application and the condo next door, forgetting that there's nearly 25% point difference in the evaluation scores of the applications, not to mention a 400% difference in incentive value. This is not comparing apples to apples. You are a lucky council because you have among you a psychic who predicted this exact situation you're in back in your March 18th meeting. This councillor asked, if a developer fills out the paperwork correctly, but is denied and says, well, you gave it to the other guy, would you be obliged to give the incentive? The answer from staff and legal was clear. It is council's decision. Council has no obligation. The guidelines are only to get your foot in the door. So any developer knew back in March they could be denied, even if they met the qualifying criteria. No one should act surprised. Instead of threatening that developers will pull money out and housing will suffer, developers should learn a lesson here to stop treating council as a rubber stamp and to pay attention to council's proper role and policy priorities, not dismiss them as unreasonable, arbitrary, against your own rules and politics. If incentives are supposed to help create more affordable housing, which is not in the CIP, but has been mentioned by advocates of business, the answer is to use the tax money to build public and social housing, not give it back to profit margins for developers of $1 million condos. Maybe some are less than $1 million, but some are definitely $1 million. To paraphrase a Canadian politician from my childhood, you have an option, council. You can say, I'm not going to do it. This is wrong for St. Catharines, and I'm not going to ask residents to pay the price. You have an option, council, to say no to the old attitudes. Saying you have no option is not good enough for St. Catharines. It is a confession of non-leadership, and this city needs your leadership. You have an option, council. You can do better than to reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Councillor Miller.
Thanks, Sally. Just, we've heard basically from the business community, we've been, threatened with maybe having a bad reputation among them if we don't reconsider this. As an average citizen, what do you think the impact would be on the community if we do reconsider and we give in to sort of these suggestions?
Through your worship, if you reconsider, you'll have a terrible reputation from the residents and from beyond, because it'll look like that you've just been beaten and you're just a rubber stamp, and that you're not looking out for the interests of the residents, and that when situations come up for your vote, that we can't count on you to think of us, and that you'll only be thinking of, well, did they fill the paperwork out right, and what does the business community want?